Afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming today at the Wolfville Post Office for this wonderful event. It's so heartwarming to see all of you here today. Honestly, it's my first time in Wolfville. I'm from Gatineau, Quebec, near Ottawa. And the community is so charming, smiling. You can feel the energy. It's fantastic. So thank you for coming here today. My name is Ariane Sauvé. I'm the Director of Communications Client Services at Canada Post. And I'm honored to be your MC today. Mon nom est Ariane Sauvé. Je suis directrice des communications, services aux clients à Post Canada. Je suis vraiment enchantée d'être ici aujourd'hui. C'est fantastique de vous voir. C'est une énergie incroyable. Vraiment, merci beaucoup d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. So we are here together during the week of Remembrance Day to pay our deepest tributes to the remarkable Mona Parsons, a true hometown hero. Today we'll hear stories about her, we'll stand in awe of her courage and determination, and we'll unveil her new commemorative stamp, sharing her story with Canadians across the country. This is such a special event for the Wolfville community, but for all Canadians. And I very much want to welcome each and every one of you for being here today, and thank you for just taking the time to join us. As we begin, we would like to first acknowledge that we are on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We recognize that we're all treaty people and have responsibilities to this land and to each other. So today this land is home of many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We honor their legacy and the legacy of all Indigenous peoples as we strengthen our relationships with the communities we serve. And at Canada Post, Canada Post, safety is our number one priority. And one way we embed safety into our workplace culture is to start every event with a safety moment. So I would like to share that tradition with you today. After we unveil the stamp later on here, you'll have a chance to view it up close. So I would like to ask everyone to please watch your step when you go and see the stamp. There's a bit of a hill and it could be slippery, so please watch your step when you go see the stamp. So now I'd like to introduce you to our special guests for today's event. We are fortunate to have some wonderful speakers with us today. So please help me give a warm welcome to author Andrea Hill-Lear, Mona Parsons' biographer, who is a delight. She's a sunshine. Thank you so much for being here. We also have the mayor of Wolfville, Wendy Donovan. Thank you for being here. And the president and CEO of Canada Post, Doug Ettinger. We'll also be hearing from Mike Butler, who will be reading a few words from MP Cody Blois, as well as Jody McKay, who will be delivering remarks on behalf of the Honorable Keith Irving, a member of the Legislative Assembly for King South. One of the stamp designers is also with us today. His name is Larry Burke, and thank you for making the drive from the PEI to be with us today. I don't see you, I've seen you. Hi, thank you for coming here today. I would also like to welcome members of the Wolfville Town Council, as well as the members of the Wolfville Legion, who are here today with their puppies fundraising. So if you don't have your puppy yet, so you can come and see one of their members. And lastly, I would like to welcome the staff of the Wolfville Post Office who are joining for the ceremony. So now it's time to hear from our first speaker. Andrea Hill-Lear wrote an incredible book about Mona's life, and she is dedicated to ensuring her legacy is not forgotten. So she was also consulted on the creation of the stamp. So we are incredibly thankful and for how you helped bring it to life. Thank you so much, Andrea. So please join me in welcoming Andrea to the stage.
Well, I've said to a few people, I may cry or even swear, but I've been assured that Mona would forgive me because this is an exceptionally emotional moment. So I'm sure that many of you are here because you know Mona's story, and for those of you who don't, you're about to find it out. So Mona Parsons lived a privileged life here in Nova Scotia. Born in Middleton, her father moved the family to Wolfville when Mona was 10, after his business in Middleton was destroyed in a fire that devastated several Middleton businesses. She attended the Acadia Ladies Seminary, worshipped with her family at the Wolfville Baptist Church at the bottom of Highland Avenue, enjoyed summer concerts in the park and winter skating carnivals on the duck pond in the Evangeline rink, and snowshoeing out on the dikes. She performed in plays and light opera at the Opera House, now the Al Whittle Theatre, and studied music and elocution. She wanted a career in theatre, so furthered her studies at the Curry School of Expression in Boston. Eventually, she moved to New York, where she landed the role of chorus girl in Florence Ziegfeld's Follies, at the time the largest musical revue in the world. But life changed for Mona in 1930 when her mother became ill. She quit the Follies and returned to her home on Acadia Street, now Wolfville School. The day after Mona's 29th birthday, her mother died. Perhaps her mother's death caused Mona to reevaluate her life. Perhaps the stock market crash a few months earlier in October 1929 also influenced her. She enjoyed her independence, but showbiz wasn't going to sustain her. She returned to New York to study nursing at the Jersey School of Medicine, graduating cum laude. An expat Nova Scotia ear, nose, and throat specialist hired her for his Park Avenue practice. In one of the most cosmopolitan cities in North America, Mona, in the midst of the Great Depression, was an independent woman living and working on her own terms. If she was looking for a husband, then the patience of a New York specialist offered better prospects than those she knew from among the showbiz crowd. In February 1938, her brother Ross, who was based in Rhode Island, asked if she would show a Dutch business associate around New York. Nothing pleased Mona more than to show off her adopted city. Willem Leonhardt didn't fall under the spell of New York as much as he fell under Mona's. He proposed. There followed a quick trip to Nova Scotia to meet her father and stepmother, then another trip in the spring of 1938 to meet Willem's family. The pair married at the Laren Town Hall on September 1st, 1937, and embarked on an extended honeymoon trip through Europe with long stays on the Italian and then the French Rivieras. Upon returning to Laren, they built their dream home, and Mona immersed herself in designing the lavish gardens. For 2 years, they enjoyed a very good life, entertaining, traveling, attending concerts, and visiting clubs where they dined and danced away the evenings. Mona wore couturier clothes and adorned herself in gold, platinum, and diamonds. But books in her personal library, of which I have one, shows that she followed politics and world events closely, and in particular, the rise of the Nazis in Germany and the fascists in Italy. Right now, today, as we gather here, there are nations who are perpetrating war to dominate, even annihilate their neighbors. Nations that are willing to go to any lengths, including genocide, to achieve their aims. Mona Parsons witnessed this in the 1930s as the Nazi and fascist ideologies gained strength, not just in Germany, but in other countries, including Canada. History demonstrates that when one nation invades another, the citizens under occupation do not simply give up and welcome aggressors with open arms. If the US were to invade Canada, would we think, oh, well, why not? They sort of look like us, sort of sound like us. What's the harm? That's what the Nazis hoped the Dutch would think when they invaded the Netherlands in May 1940. Their languages, culture, and history had some common roots. And although taking a country by force may lead to the capitulation of a government and the surrender of lands, it never leads to the destruction of the spirit and the will of its people. If anything, it strengthens them. And that's what happened when the Nazis occupied the Netherlands in 1940. Mona Parsons, her husband, Willem Leonhardt, and hundreds of other Dutch citizens dug in and formed a network of people from all walks of life who would do anything to resist the Nazis until they could be ousted from the country. Mona and her husband resisted for more than a year, helping downed Allied airmen to navigate the network to board fishing boats in coastal communities that would eventually rendezvous with British submarines in the North Sea. Mona and Willem's home in Laren, called Ingleside, was a transfer point for airmen awaiting forged identity papers and ration cards and civilian clothing. Most stayed long enough for only a cup of tea and some food, but by September 1941, the Nazis knew about the network. Moving people around the country became increasingly difficult and dangerous. The last 2 British airmen Mona and Willem assisted in their home for an unprecedented 6 days before being able to be moved on to Leyden. It takes only a handful of traitors to betray hundreds working the network, and on September 29, 1941, Mona Parsons was arrested. Her husband had already gone into hiding. Mona refused to join him because she wouldn't leave her 2 dogs, Knock and Brick. Weird names for dogs. Besides, she believed it would look less suspicious if she remained at home with the dogs, telling people that Willem had gone fishing in Friesland. But when the Gestapo turned up on the doorstep, they didn't buy the story. Bullies revel in intimidating people. The Gestapo expected that a tall, willowy socialite used to the best in life would quickly cave under interrogation and tell them everything they wanted to know. Bullies often underestimate people. Mona feigned ignorance, even when read the names of people she knew, and disguised her shock upon learning that some had already been executed. The Nazis might suspect, but she would never confirm anything for them. Mona was held without charge and without legal consultation, sleeping on a straw-filled ticking on the stone floor of an Amsterdam prison for nearly 3 months, until she was taken from her cell in the early hours of December 21st, 1941, to face her accusers. She was one of the first and few women to be tried by a Nazi military tribunal in the occupied Netherlands. They found her guilty and sentenced her to death. When she met her sentence with calm, dignity, and poise, the head of the tribunal granted her an appeal. Her sentence commuted to life in hard labor. She was transported to the Einraad Penitentiary in the Rhineland in January 1942. Boarding a prison train, she saw Willem. He too had been arrested and was in transport to another prison. Einraad was notorious for the abuse and cruel treatment of its female inmates. No distinction was made between political prisoners like Mona and common criminals and the criminally insane. Prisoners were treated like animals. 4 people slept on wooden platforms in cells designed to hold 1 prisoner. Their toilet was a bucket in the middle of the floor. Emptied daily, a splash of creosote was supposed to disinfect and contain the stench. From Einraad, Mona moved to a labor camp near Wiedenbrück on September 23, 1944. 200 female prisoners walked several miles daily from the camp to a factory and a hospital, and returned to the camp each evening, exhausted, hungry, and cold. On February 6, 1945, Mona was again herded into a cattle car. The train stopped at the small station in Vechta, and the women walked the short distance to the prison. Conditions were harsh and cold, but the prison director allowed her charges to have extra clothing under their prison garb to keep out the winter's chill. Shortly after arriving at Vechta, 44-year-old Mona met 22-year-old Wendelin van Botselaar. The young woman had escaped a couple of times and told Mona that she would do so again and that she would take Mona with her. After nearly 4 years in Nazi prisons and camps, Mona had no reason to believe that or even hope that this might be possible. Their chance came on March 24, 1945, during an extensive bombing campaign by the Allies, destroying nearby targets, rail lines, and an airfield. Unfortunately, both the men's and women's prisons were right by those targets. When the men's prison suffered a direct hit, the director of the women's prison threw open the gates and let the prisoners run. Wendelin grabbed Mona's hand, and together they raced out into the smoke, the bombs, and the bullets. When at last the attack subsided, the women found themselves by a road. They tore off pieces of their prison pinafores to fashion headscarves, then buried the rest in the mud. Wendelin knew the territory well and plotted a course towards the Netherlands, stopping at farms to offer their labor in return for food and board. They were nearly caught a few times, but Wendelin's quick thinking and Mona's acting talents in portraying herself as a mentally challenged woman with a cleft palate got them to the Dutch border after nearly 3 weeks. During an Allied artillery and infantry advance, the two women became separated after 3 weeks of their harrowing journey across Germany. Mona, still playing an addled woman with a speech impediment, pushed into Holland with the family that had billeted her. They spent a miserable rainy night in a haymow trying to fend off the cold. In the morning, people approached, offering food. When Mona heard them speak Dutch, she was nearly delirious with relief. Having been forbidden from speaking anything but German during her imprisonment, she struggled to recall Dutch. Finally, she communicated that she was Canadian, married to a Dutch businessman. They quickly told her what the Canadians had done to help the Dutch during the Hongerwinter of 1944-45. A farmer offered to take her to a clearing station staffed by British soldiers. She was overjoyed to think that she would finally be able to get a message to her father in Nova Scotia to tell them that she was still alive. Mona Parsons carried only 87 pounds on her 5-foot, 8-inch frame by the end of March 1945. She had several teeth missing, was filthy and bedraggled, but despite feeling confused, fearful, and addled by her newly acquired freedom, she mustered composure and approached one of the soldiers loading boxes onto a truck. When she told him she was Canadian, he regarded her with suspicion and said, "If you're Canadian, where are you from?" She replied, "I'm from a little town in Nova Scotia called Wolfville." He swore softly and nearly dropped the box he was holding. "My name is Clarence Leonard, and we are the North Nova Scotia Highlanders." I've been telling this story for 26 years, and it still hits me. I'm pleased to say that Clarence's son, Alex, is with us today to celebrate the unveiling of Mona's stamp. Alex, if you're here, would you... Hello, my love. Thank you. Mona was free, but had to be taken to brigade headquarters to have her story verified. Though she received medical treatment, she was subjected to rigorous questioning. When she persisted in saying, "My name is Mona Parsons, I'm from Wolfville, Nova Scotia," a British major overheard her. He remembered meeting two captains from this Wolfville, Vincent White and Ralph Shaw. He went off to find them, but in the meantime, the physician treating her was incredulous. "Mona? Kelly!" she cried. Kelly McLean, Army doctor from New Brunswick, had been among her circle of friends during her brief time as a student at Acadia University. Talk of a Canadian woman in their midst, and an escaped prisoner of the Nazis, no less, circulated quickly. Another Nova Scotian at brigade headquarters was Robbins Elliott, a 21-year-old intelligence officer. His father had been the Parsons family physician in Wolfville. Robbins went immediately to see her. Mona wrote afterwards to her father that Robbins was a fine-looking boy. Robbins wrote to his father that Mona was well despite her considerable ordeal. There were still many trials and tribulations for Mona Parsons in the years ahead, but she had survived and escaped from Nazi imprisonment. If it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a community to help tell a story like Mona's. When I first came across her story in a copy of the Acadia Alumni Newsletter in Acadia's archives in 1994, Pat Townsend, the archivist, put me in touch with that Robbins Elliott. When I ran out of leads in Canada, he made sure that I got to the Netherlands to do a speaking tour that would help me find those who knew more about Mona's story, including, by then, Wendelin van Holte tot Echten van Botselaar, the woman with whom she'd escaped in March 1945. After Robin's death, his daughter Wendy Elliott, took up where her dad left off. She rallied the women of Wolfville, and with the help of Linda Wheeldon, who sadly is no longer with us, but whose scarf I wear today, Ramona Jennings and Elizabeth Costers, and the cooperation of Randall House Museum, and Crystal Tanner is here today too. They raised the funds to create, cast, and install that sculpture over there, created by Nistal Prem de Boer. Mona Parsons never wore a uniform and never carried a gun, but she was willing to put her freedom and her life on the line for liberty and justice. That you are all here today to celebrate this magnificent stamp is a tribute to Mona. No doubt she would be humble and extremely pleased. I'm grateful to Canada Post, and especially to Joy Parks, who first told me more than a year ago, that there would be a stamp, and then told me I couldn't tell anyone. Nearly killed me. And every time I've been in Ottawa and I had said I want to have lunch with her, she avoids me like the plague. But I wouldn't kill her now because I'm just too happy. She isn't here today, but I have conveyed to her how grateful I am to her, to Canada Post, to the design team, and thank you to all of you here and across Canada and even overseas who wrote letters in support of this stamp. I didn't swear, but I did cry. As Mona wrote on May 5th, 1945, on describing her feelings about the liberation of the Netherlands, I join her in saying, the joy is almost too much to bear. Thank you.
Okay, I'm a crier. I'm French. Everybody. Thank you so much, Andrea. That was wonderful. And thank you for being Mona's voice and for telling her story to all of us and to all Canada. Whew. So next, please welcome Mayor Donovan to the stage.
Promise I will not make you cry. I hope not to make you cry. Thank you, and thank you so much, Andrea. That was truly moving. I'd like to, first of all, mention that today it's 5 days before Remembrance Day, and so it's very appropriate, and I'm not as tall as Andrea, that we are here on this spot of remembrance to celebrate, on the occasion of the stamp unveiling, the bravery and resilience of a dedicated woman, a war hero from Wolfville's past. As I was thinking of what I would write and what I would say today, and I became better acquainted with the story of Mona Parsons, I was really struck by the echoes of perseverance in that time and perseverance in the present time. And that's not to suggest that anything about our present time has any similarity to the experience that Mona lived through, but rather the echoes of staying the course when it's the course that you believe in. So let me take a few moments to share my appreciation for a group of dedicated women, and you know who you are, and I'm going to ask you to stand up at the end, so just get ready, whose efforts and imagination have helped to bring us here today. The connection between Mona Parsons and the women of Wolfville, yes, that's who you are, is years in the making. In fact, I learned, as Andrea was talking, that it was even more connected than I understood it was. So that was wonderful also for me. It started in the story of Mona, brought to light by Andrea, and published in 2000. And Andrea has read or told you some of the things that I know we'll find in her book from information that she found in the archives of Acadia University. I understand that was later turned into a documentary, and I have seen the Canadian Heritage Minute. It makes one wonder what else is in those archives, Wendy Elliott. In 2006, so 6 years after her book was published, Andrea wrote a piece for WOW, Women of Wolfville, for their annual production, and that year it was entitled Matriarchives. And it was imaginary conversation between Mona and Constance Howard, also a perhaps not yet as well known a personality in Wolfville, but I understand that there is a book in the works. And we will soon know as much maybe of Constance as we do about Mona, also a person associated with Acadia. Wendy Elliott gave me a few quotes or lines from what you wrote in 2006, Andrea, so if I may have the liberty of sharing that. Andrea had Mona say, "My life was much quieter after I came back to Wolfville. I didn't talk about what happened during the war very much, except to those who knew me. I found that when I mentioned it to strangers, particularly young people, they seemed to think I was a demented old bird." That never happens to we women of a certain age, does it? Besides, there was so much going on here, so much life, so many young people going to Acadia, just starting out and looking forward to a full life. The war was so long ago. We just heard that in 2017, Nistel Bremdeboer's statue of a gleeful Mona, "The joy is almost too much to bear," was unveiled. Its presence was brought to life with organization from, yet again, the women of Wolfville and support from the Wolfville Historical Society, the provincial, federal, and local government, a significant private donor, and many smaller donors across this country. Not a group to rest on their laurels or their significant accomplishment. Exactly 3 years ago, members of the Women of Wolfville wrote the chairperson of the National Stamp Advisory Committee to support the creation of a stamp to acknowledge and commemorate Mona Parsons. They believed that Mona deserved her country's recognition, and this stamp goes a long way to further that effort. And if those in the audience who are members of Women of Wolfville would please stand up. Don't clap yet. But if you would stand, and so in recognizing no, not yet. Joe. In recognizing an important woman from our country and our town's past, I want to share my sincere appreciation to the women of Wolfville today for their continuing efforts and contributions to making our town a vibrant and caring community, one that celebrates its today and helps us to remember its past. Thank you to the women of Wolfville, and thank you to Andrea and all those in their orbit who brought us to today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan, for these wonderful words. And I would like to invite Mike Butler. Yes, it's your turn. To the stage to read a letter on behalf of MP Cody Blois.
Hi. I'm only going to stray for a couple of sentences from Cody's words and he said I was allowed. I've always believed and I've always been taught that there is nothing more powerful than the written word. So I don't get a lot of chances to talk to Andrea, but I can take a microphone right now and say thank you for writing down this story for everyone to be able to share and have. Same with the women of Wolfville and their stories. There's nothing more powerful than writing it down and sharing it and passing it on and letting us read it forever. It's how legacy is created a lot of the times. That's from me. Now I'll get on to Cody's words. Please accept my sincere regrets on being absent from the ceremony, presenting the stamp honoring the very courageous Second World War heroine, Mona Parsons, here at the Wolfville Post Office. I want to pass along my greetings to each of you and thank you for attending this very special event, which pays tribute to a true hometown hero that has touched the lives of many around the world with her bravery, courage, and everlasting inspiration in times of turmoil. Mona Parsons has been the subject of many books, theatrical presentations, a Canadian Heritage Moment video, and Wolfville's special, The Joy is Almost Too Much to Bear statue. Mona has also been included in the very celebrated Valley Ghost Walks since its inception over a decade ago. It is fitting that we unveil this special Mona Parsons stamp here in Wolfville, where Mona attended and graduated Acadia, thrived in many Acadia theater productions, and later returned, where she lived out her years and is now laid to rest nearby in Willowbank Cemetery. But it's Mona's bravery and courage as a nurse and informal member of the Dutch resistance in the Netherlands during the Second World War that continue to inspire us. Her efforts will be forever applauded, and her legacy will stay close to our minds, as today we introduce another token to honor her valor. We gather today to unveil the Mona Parsons commemorative stamp. Thank you to the many involved in making this dream a reality. I am a very proud person to be the MP for Kings Hants, the home to so many heroes and heroines of our history. Sincerely, Cody Blois, MP for Kings Hams.
Thank you, Mr. Butler, for helping deliver Cody's message. Next, I'm pleased to invite Judy McKay to the stage to say a few words on behalf of the Honorable Keith Irving.
Good afternoon. I was not given any permission to ad-lib any of Keith's words. Keith is in the legislature this afternoon, but he asked me to pass on some words from him. Wolfville friends and citizens, Keith would very much like to be here today in our unofficial town square, now home to the beautiful Mona Parsons statue and the recently installed Alex Colville art to celebrate the new Canadian stamp of Mona Parsons. As a young boy, Keith was introduced to stamp collecting by his dad. He loved commemorative stamps because they told stories. Today, we now recognize that commemorative stamps make important contributions to our collective understanding of our country's history, the people who shaped that history, and the values that have guided us as a country. The story of Mona Parsons reflects all of this. Her story is one of courage, resilience, and taking risks in the face of danger, the values we associate with the generation that went to war. As the only Canadian woman to be imprisoned during that dark period, the Mona Parsons story, beautifully captured in Andrea Hill-Lair's book, is one that needs to be amplified, and the town of Wolfville has done just this. We want to pay tribute today to Mona Parsons, but to also all the citizens who have ensured that Mona's place in our community, in Canadian history, is recognized and preserved. In only a few short days, we will commemorate Remembrance Day here beside the cenotaph. Mona's story reminds us that during those war years, citizens shared a collective commitment to justice and to the defense of freedom. Mona Parsons' legacy is a poignant reminder of our shared responsibility to uphold these principles. Keith would like to congratulate Canada Post for honoring Mona Parsons and bringing her story to all Canadians. Soon, in homes across our great country, people will look down at a letter with Mona Parsons stamped in the top right corner and know her story. We, as Wolfville citizens, should be very proud of the collective effort that has resulted in this added chapter to the Mona Parsons story. With best wishes, Keith Irving, MLA.
Thank you, Ms. McKay. Now I would like to introduce Canada Post President and CEO, Doug Ittinger, who, as many of you know, is a proud Nova Scotian.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to beautiful Wolfville. Bonjour et merci d'être là. On behalf of everyone from Canada Post, thank you all for taking the time to join us today. It's a little cool, but it's not too bad. And we really appreciate you making the time. I'd like to say a special thank you to Mayor Wendy Donovan and Andrea Hill-Lair for speaking at this event, and with such emotion and passion, it couldn't have been any better. And thank you to Mike Butler and Jody McKay for helping MP Cody Blois and the Honourable Keith Irving deliver their respective messages. Thank you very much. I'm also pleased to welcome the Wolfville Legion and members of the Wolfville Town Council. I think we got quorum here for the Wolfville Town Council, so if you want to pass any motions, go for it. Yeah, okay. And there's a few kids in the audience, and thanks to all them and others that have joined us today for this great event. It's great to see you here. And I would like to give a very special welcome to my granddaughter, Evie, who's here today. It's wonderful to have you in the audience. Yay, Evie. And your parents, too. It's nice to see them, but you're even better. So I am very, very pleased to be here this afternoon, as Ariane said, in my home province with all you. I'm thrilled that the reason we're here is to pay tribute to Mona Parsons. I can't also imagine a better setting to unveil this stamp. Right beside her statue over here, outside the Wolfville post office, and in the very heart of this growing and thriving community of Wolfville, Mona's hometown where she was raised. I'd like to start by saying how much I absolutely love our stamp program. It gives us this very unique opportunity to tell the stories of amazing, extraordinary Canadians, and we love to do that at Canada Post. We're able to recognize the people whose achievements and accomplishments deserve celebration on a nationwide basis. And this is especially true for Remembrance Day, coming up shortly. Every year, we create a special stamp for Remembrance Day to help us honor the soldiers who have fought and sacrificed for our freedoms. But I think it's also important to tell the stories of, let's say, everyday people, those who also showed great courage in situations of unimaginable hardship and challenges, like Mona Parsons. I'm sure everyone here was overjoyed and proud when they heard that she was going to be featured on a special stamp, and some were told not to say anything for an extended period of time, or else they would have to be sacrificed. Here, though, in our neck of the woods, Mona is somewhat of a household name. She's definitely part of the local history, and we know how much she deserves this great honor. Unfortunately, though, in other parts of Canada, her story is not very well known. Most Canadians don't know about her incredible courage and determination, but I can guarantee you that's about to change pretty quickly. And again, let me say thank you to Andrea for sharing Mona's story here today and for writing an exceptional book about her. I also want to thank the curator of the Randall House Museum, Crystal Tanner, who I believe is here, and everyone at that organization for sharing all the information on Mona. At a time when the world was facing unspeakable loss and tragedy in World War II, Mona risks everything to fight for the values she believed in, for basic human rights, for her dignity and the dignity of others, and for, ultimately, democracy. Decades later, her courage and her conviction still inspires me, and I'm pretty sure inspires everyone here today in terms of what wonderful example it sets. So, as such, I'm incredibly grateful to help unveil this stamp today, because we'll also be helping to amplify her story nationwide through our network, through our social media, and hopefully through the media coverage that this story gets today and tomorrow. She absolutely deserves to be recognized as a real Canadian hero alongside our bravest troops. She will be an inspiration, I can guarantee you, for all Canadians from coast to coast to coast. And by the way, get your cash ready, because stamps will be available tomorrow. And don't, buy lots and send letters and postcards. They'll be available in 6,000 post offices all across Canada. We are literally in every community, so her image and her story is going to be known throughout the country. We have panes of 5 and a 10-pack, and there's about 1.5 million stamps that have been produced for this. So run to your nearest post office. I don't know where you'd find one, but there might be one around here. So merci d'être ici pour rendre hommage à Mona Parsons. So now it's almost time for the special unveiling, but before we do that, I want to again thank each and every one of you for showing up here today to honor, recognize, and celebrate the remarkable Mona Parsons, an amazing Canadian and Wolfville's own hometown hero. So thank you again for coming, and we'll do the unveiling in a second, but I'll pass it back to Ariane. Thank you.
Oh yes, it is time. It is finally time to unveil the stamp. So may I please ask Mayor Donovan, Andrea, and Doug to help with the unveiling. And I'd also like to invite media and guests to come closer. and I'll do a countdown. So you can come closer.
You were great. The book was great.
And again, please watch your step.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No. What's that?
Okay, so I'll do a countdown. So 3, 2, 1, go!